Guys, what's going on? It's Spycat, and I'm back to doing my actor series. I'm gonna try and get some of these actors done so I can kind of put my movies back in genre like I kind of want to do, because I have all these actors in order that I haven't done yet, so I got a ton of them. So, the actor that I'm doing today, guys, is obviously Steve Martin. He was born August 14th, 1945, and he's 71 years old, and we're going to go through the movies that I have of him in my collection. So, first movie I have, the earliest movie that I have of Steve Martin, is definitely one of my favorite movies of all time, The Jerk. Great movie. I got this 26th anniversary edition right here. This movie has always been one of my favorite movies of all time. You guys remember this movie. He grew up with the black family, like in the ghetto. He has a dog called, I can't remember. Is it called Bullshit or is it called Fucker? I can't remember, but it's one of those. But this is just one of the greatest movies of all time. I love this movie. It even has like a little bit of it's actually kind of a romantic comedy. I remember, even though it's really, really stupid, this was the like Dumb and Dumber before Dumb and Dumber came out, and this one came out in 1979. And then in 4 years later, in 1983, he was in two other movies that I have in my collection. The Man with Two Brains. This is a snapback version. Let's see what it looks like inside. I don't really remember this movie. I just bought it just because I'm a collector and I collect 80s and 90s. Yeah, when I was a kid, I'll be honest, I didn't watch this movie just because it was really weird. Probably didn't understand it when I was a kid, but I probably got to watch this one just to kind of see how it is. He was also in The Lonely Man. This one also came out in 1983, the year that I was born in. Kind of a romantic comedy. This is a good one. I kind of like this one. I don't see any other known actresses that I know of in this movie. But yeah, he was in The Lonely Guy in 83. And in 1984, a year later, he was in All of Me. Says it's the best American comedy since Tootsie. I don't know about that. I like Tootsie a lot better than this movie, but that's just me. But yeah, this one came out in 84. Then 2 years later, he was in Three Amigos. This is a great movie. This is one of the movies my dad rented for me when I was a kid. He loved this movie a lot. Great movie. I got the snapback version. All-star cast in this movie. Chevy Chase, Martin Short, looking short as ever. And this is the snapback version. And this is a HBO movie too. And then he was in Little Shop of Horrors, that came out also in 1986. This is kind of like a comedy, kind of a horror comedy musical, I guess you could say. I never really liked any musical movies. That's just me. I really can't think of any musical movie that I like. So I really didn't watch this movie that much, but it was still good for kids in the 80s. I remember Rick Moranis is in it. Yeah, Little Shop of Horrors. Let's see. Then he was in Roxanne. This one came out in 1987 with Daryl Hannah. This is a good movie. I remember it's a really funny movie. He was born with a big nose, pretty much, looking like Pinocchio, and even though a lot of people make fun of him, he still managed to he has like the brain to kind of talk crap to him back. I just remember this one scene when he's in the restaurant with the girl and people are making fun of him, and he's like, pretty much has like some good comeback lines, I guess you could say. But Roxanne's definitely a good Steve Martin movie if you want to watch it. And this is definitely my The Jerk is probably one of my favorite Steve Martin movies, but this is one of those movies that is just definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. Hughes Brothers film. This is definitely one of my favorite movies of all time. I've watched this over 10 times, over 5 times within the last 10 years probably. Just one of the best movies of all time. John Candy is just the best in this movie. Steve Martin is great in this movie. I remember the part where he goes up to the woman when he loses all the luggage in the, I forgot, the airport or something like that. And he's like, I just remember he kept saying the F word, and he's like, you can get me my effing bag and my effing this and my effing this. And then and I think that lady does like a voice on The Simpsons. I could have sworn she does, but maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, guys, I got 2 versions of this movie. Got this one because it's the original cover. You guys know me. I love the original covers. And then I have this Those Aren't Pillows edition, which is pretty cool. It's kind of like a hologram. Cool little cover here. It's probably got some whole bunch of special features on this one. It has a deleted scene, and to have a deleted scene in one of the best movies of all time is just great. If you haven't seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, it's one of the best movies of all time. And if you guys remember, Robert Downey Jr. did a movie called, what was it? I want to say Due Date? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Due Date. But Due Date is pretty much a knockoff of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I remember Family Guy kind of made fun of this movie, too, in one of the episodes. But definitely have to say this is the best John Candy movie and the best Steve Martin movie. That's just me. And last movie that I have of Steve Martin that was in the 80s was Parenthood. This one came out in 1989. I remember that I really wanted to rent this movie when I was a kid, but my parents didn't let me watch it because it was PG-13. And I was really mad because it's like, you see the cover and there's like, this is not the original cover, by the way. There's kids on it, and it's like, it's a kid's movie, but it's PG-13, you can't watch it, you know what I mean? So I remember I always got mad because they never let me watch this one. Good parents don't let their kids watch bad cussing movies like this. But this was a good one. And the next movie I have, guys, came out in 1990. Now we're on the 90s Steve Martin movies. My Blue Heaven, with another movie he did with Rick Moranis. Him and Rick Moranis did a few movies together, I think. I think I have 2. There might be like a 3rd one or 4th one, I'm not sure. But, yeah, My Blue Heaven. I got the old school snapback DVD version of this. Really cool. Can't remember if that's the original cover, but I think it might be. This is a good movie. Funny one. Let's see. Then he was in L.A. Story a year after that, in 1991. I got this 15th anniversary edition. I actually got this at Goodwill for $1, and it's actually still in the package, never been opened, even has a slip cover, and all that crap. And this was the 1991 movie that I remember. This is definitely one of the best Steve Martin movies there is, besides The Jerk, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And of course, there's definitely more than those. But from what I remember, Father of the Bride was known for this movie. And yeah, Father of the Bride, Diane Keaton, Martin Short, another movie that Steve Martin and Martin Short's in. For some reason, I used to have part 2 of this movie, but I guess I sold it or something. Have to get that one back. I should have part 2. And, oh, you know what? Wow, you know what? This is another one of the greatest Steve Martin movies of all time. This is kind of one of those forgotten about movies that people don't really talk about that much. But this is straight up the early 90s, all-star cast. I would say that Steve Martin's best dramatic role was in this movie. In the beginning of the movie, Steve Martin, he's a rich guy. He's like really rich. He has like a really fancy, nice car. He gets robbed, and he kind of doesn't. When he gets robbed, he doesn't do what he should do when you're getting robbed, and he ends up getting shot. It's a real intense, dramatic scene. He should have won an Academy Award just for the scene when he gets shot. Really, the acting that he does in this is just superb. I remember it's realistic. Like, he gets shot in the leg, and I think he like wets his pants, and it's really realistic of what would happen if you get shot. And this is just a great movie. One of those few movies that Mary McDonnell was in the 90s that I love. She was in Dances with Wolves, one of my favorite actors right there. Also going to do her, Kevin Kline, and Danny Glover in my actor series too, because they're just superb actors. Great movie. Super great movie. House Sitter came out in 1992. Oh, and Grand Canyon was 1991 too. House Sitter, 1992. This movie was alright. You know, it's early 90s movie. I didn't really like it that much. But yeah, House Sitter. I only have the VHS of that. And Leap of Faith, which came out in 1992. Also in 1992. This movie's out of print. I think this one's kind of harder to find. It might go for like $10 used, $20 used. I think I paid probably like $10 to $15 for it. But I really like this movie because you know those like churches that are just about the money. They kind of use Jesus and use God to kind of so they can get rich off money and take people's money in the church. This, I think, is kind of like that. Steve Martin plays this kind of Pentecostal guy. One of those guys who's just faking God's given him power and doing these miracles so he can take people's money. I think this is kind of like that. Pretty sure this is about that. Yeah, he's kind of like typical Pentecostal. Good movie, though. I like this one a lot. And then he was in Mixed Nuts, which came out 2 years after that, 1994. I don't really remember this movie a lot, but it was still a good movie. Bilko! Sergeant Bilko, guys. I just remember the preview of this movie, and that's what I remember. They were like, hey, Bilko! in Sergeant Bilko, which came out in 1996. And, yeah. And I got this one for Cop and a Half. Still trying to find Cop and a Half on DVD by itself. That was one of my favorite movies when I was a kid. Watched it a ton of times. Just a great movie, you know what I mean? And in 1999, he was in The Out-of-Towners with Goldie Hawn. Good movie. I like this one. This is kind of like the Jack Lemmon one, pretty much. Another... Jack Lemmon did this movie, I think, in the 70s? I think it was in the 70s he did this movie, too. And they were just kind of redoing it. They did a good job, I'm not going to lie. This was a funny movie. Great movie about a couple who, I think, takes a trip to New York. And they're like little small town people, so going to New York's kind of crazy. And the last movie I saw this movie in the theater when I got with my girlfriend. One of the first movies we seen the year we got together in 2003. Bringing Down the House, great movie. And that's it. Pretty much, because the light went off. So, yeah. This is a funny movie. Queen Latifah, Steve Martin, and Eugene Levy. Can't go wrong there. And that's my Steve Martin collection, guys. If you know any movies that I'm missing, let me know. What other Steve Martin's movies do you know that are really funny? Drop a comment in the comment box below, and like and subscribe. See you guys later.